You know, in some ways, it feels like Alice in Wonderland around here. It's unbelievable where we are today. It's almost surreal. This Judiciary Committee is no longer an independent branch of government, and we're supposed to be. The Senate's supposed to be an independent, equal branch of government. We're no longer that, but we're an arm and a very weak arm of the Trump White House. Every semblance of independence has just disappeared. It's gone. And I think that is something historians will look at, and they'll call it a turning point in the United States Senate. This committee, after months of breaking precedent after precedent in a manic rush to fill a Supreme Court seat, is now on the verge of voting on a nominee who has been credibly accused of sexual assault, and the committee hasn't even conducted a meaningful investigation. Yesterday, we heard the powerful and courageous testimony of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Following her testimony, I doubt that not one of us left the committee room doubting her credibility. I'm sure nobody doubted her credibility. But then Judge Kavanaugh angrily denied the allegation, and I'll get to that shortly. But we should all agree that a credible allegation of sexual assault against a nominee to our nation's highest court demands that we proceed with the utmost caution. Our constitutional obligation, at the very least, is to investigate these allegations properly. This isn't about delaying a nomination until after the election, even though we have that precedent when the Republicans did that with Merrick Garland. This is about doing our job. This is what we're elected to do, what we're paid to do. And the first step is an FBI investigation. That has always been the first step when new derogatory information comes to light about a nominee. Even in one instance when the information was as minor as decades-old marijuana use, Republicans still made sure we had an FBI investigation. Why is Judge Kavanaugh, who is facing much more serious allegations of sexual abuse, why is he being held to a lower standard than all the nominees before him? Certainly all the nominees I've seen in 44 years. A proper investigation also means hearing from all the witnesses. That includes the 4 witnesses who signed sworn affidavits offered by Dr. Ford. And most stunningly, this committee has refused to call the sole eyewitness to the alleged assault, Mark Judge. Instead, all we have is a brief letter from Mr. Judge vaguely asserting that he has no memory of this alleged incident. Well, I'd like to ask him questions about that under oath, and a lot of us would. He has effectively nailed a do not disturb sign, and apparently the Republicans on this committee are satisfied, as if oral testimony and opportunity to question a witness is unnecessary. Now, whether you believe Judge Kavanaugh or you believe Dr. Ford, the fact that we're not allowed to hear from somebody who's said to be the sole eyewitness is outrageous. Everybody here knows that. I said yesterday that an earlier time the Senate failed Anita Hill, whom I believed. Today we're doing even worse. At the time of Anita Hill, we had an FBI investigation. We had almost 24 witnesses. Here, Republicans are not willing to do either, even if it would delay this information, or this nomination, just a matter of a week or two, certainly far short of the November election. They don't want to hear women who have relevant evidence. Is that really what the Senate Judiciary Committee has lowered itself to? I'm at a loss how Republicans could think they've heard enough about Dr. Ford's allegations and are ready to move on.
Previous question is not.
I think you should look at what the reactions are you're getting around this country. Dr. Ford captivated the nation yesterday with her horrifying story of sexual assault. Every minute of her testimony was credible. She knew Brett Kavanaugh. She knew Mark Judge. This was not a case of mistaken identity. In a moment that I'll never forget, when I asked her for her strongest memory, something from the incident she couldn't escape, she testified, indelible in the hippocampus is the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two as a teenage Judge Kavanaugh drunkenly pinned Dr. Ford down to the bed and attempted to sexually assault her. Indelible is the memory of the laughter, the uproarious laughter between the two. As a member of this committee, as a former prosecutor, as a husband and a parent, I found Dr. Ford's testimony to be wholly credible. Not one member of this committee has suggested she was not, and the same cannot be said of Judge Kavanaugh. Judge Kavanaugh's veracity has been an issue every single time he's ever testified before the Senate. Whether it's repeatedly telling senators they had no role in vetting or working on various controversial Bush-era judicial nominees, something that turned out to be a blatant untruth, or whether it's testifying in response to more than 100 different questions from both Republican, half a dozen Republican and Democratic senators that he never received or believed he received obviously stolen materials from Democratic senators' computers. That was another blatant untruth. We found we could not depend on Judge Kavanaugh to tell the truth under oath. We only learned the truth years later. We only learned the truth of what he had said, untruthfully. After we reviewed the small portion of his White House record that Chairman Grassley was willing to request for this nomination. Time and time again, when confronted under oath with questions about his involvement in Bush-era scandals or controversial matters, Judge Kavanaugh misled the Senate. Now, the fact that he's misled the Senate over and over and over again, that does not make him guilty of sexual assault as a 17-year-old. Nor does the fact that he minimized the heavy drinking in his youth and misrepresented the misogyny in his yearbook. But it does go to the heart of Judge Kavanaugh's truthfulness anytime he's faced with potentially incriminating questions. Yesterday, Judge Kavanaugh falsely claimed over and over again that every other person Dr. Ford placed in the house said the assault didn't happen. That's just not true. And we know it's not. The only person who's claimed this incident didn't happen is Brett Kavanaugh. The others said they had no knowledge or memory of it, just as Dr. Ford assumed they would say, given that it was for them an ordinary night. And one of them even stated she believed Dr. Ford, which of course Judge Kavanaugh conveniently failed to acknowledge. Judge Kavanaugh's defiance and evasiveness, his vehement partisan attacks against members of this committee, in the face of powerful, incriminating testimony, surpassed even that of Clarence Thomas at the time of Anita Hill. He tried to portray Dr. Ford's allegation as part of a calculated and orchestrated political hit. In my years as a prosecutor, I saw a lot of times when people try to blame the victim, not to own up to their own deeds. He angrily asserted baseless political tirades. He was all too eager to promote the false Republican talking point that Senator Feinstein was lying in wait with this allegation. He even claimed the allegations were driven by revenge on behalf of the Clintons. It's hard to make this stuff up. That amounts to conspiratorial madness. In my time in the Senate, I have never seen such volatility, partisanship, and a lack of judicial temperament from any nominee for any court in any administration. It's no secret that I have deep concerns about what a Justice Kavanaugh would mean for the rights of women, for workers, for health care, for unchecked presidential power, and other important issues. I also believe he's unfit to serve on our nation's highest court because of his history of misleading the Senate while under oath. But as serious as these concerns are, this is different. Voting to advance and ultimately confirm Judge Kavanaugh while he's under this dark cloud of suspicion will forever change the Senate and our nation's highest court. It will politicize the U.S. Supreme Court, a branch of our government that should be above politics. And for victims and survivors of sexual violence struggling with whether to come forward, the consequences may be even worse. Every one of us who has been a prosecutor has seen how hard it is sometimes for victims to come forth. And are we sending the signal that you stay there, don't come forth? You know, how this committee handles this nomination will be viewed as a reflection of how seriously our society views credible claims of sexual misconduct. During Dr. Ford's testimony, the National Sexual Assault Hotline saw an unprecedented 147% increase in calls. When survivors see us taking sexual assault seriously, they're empowered to come forward. If they see us callously sweeping it under the rug, I fear they'll have disastrous consequences. If victims think they'll never be believed or will not matter even if they are believed, then why come forward at all? Dr. Ford deserves to be heard. And that must mean more than just checking a box. Remember, Dr. Ford did not spend her entire life preparing for this moment. She is not backed by the most powerful officials in our nation's government. She did not come here with a political agenda. She did not testify with a job promotion on the line. She did not evade our questions, and she did not demean our motives of either Republicans or Democrats. She instead plainly, with grace, and at times emotionally, recounted the trauma that she experienced as a 15-year-old girl. Trauma that has been haunting her for the 36 years since. She had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward. I listened closely to both her and Judge Kavanaugh, and I believe her as I believed Anita Hill. I'll be voting no on Judge Kavanaugh's nomination. He does not have the veracity nor the temperament for a lifetime appointment to the highest court in our nation. And no such nominee should be confirmed in the face of such serious, credible, and unresolved allegations of sexual assault.